I know that everybody can have difficulties in making it to the grocery store on occasion. That's why Queen of the Hill Deliveries, a locally owned business here in Richmond Hill, Georgia, is a great option. With them, you can always expect to pay store prices, always get store sales, promos, gas points, and BOGOs. You can have your wine, beer, and prescription drugs delivered from Kroger or Publix. You'll get complete transparency in pricing and a truly dedicated personal shopper in Erika Martin. Go check them out on Facebook by searching Queen of the Hill Deliveries.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Because
We Want to
podcast.
So during our last episode, you heard us having a conversation with Erika Martin, who happens to be the owner of Queen of the Hill Deliveries here in Richmond Hill, Georgia. And we did discover that after our episode, we are going to take credit, Erika, that she got a couple extra customers. So that was pretty awesome.
Yes, we are definitely taking that credit.
So probably had nothing to do with us, but it's
It
pretty
had
awesome.
everything to do with us.
Yeah, okay. So anyways, Erika also happens to be the mother of Zach from Zach's World, a.k.a. cricketsandtrains.com. If you haven't heard of him, look him up on Facebook, Zach's World. He is very well known in the community, and he also happens to be on the autism spectrum. And this happens to be Autism Awareness Month. Whether you agree with the focus there, I think some of us just want to hear Autism Acceptance Month or Autism Acceptance Every Day. But either way, we thought it was a good idea to have an episode with Zach. So the first part of the episode, we're going to talk to Erika, and you're going to hear us discussing what it's like to be the parent of an autistic child. And then in the second part of the episode, you're going to hear Zach.
You're going to hear Zach's World.
Yeah. And you're going to hear him talk about crickets.
Trains.
And fireflies.
That Jim didn't even know existed.
And there is one F-bomb.
F-bomb. So yeah, take your kids away if you're kind of worried about that. But yeah, it's just one time, and
it's towards the end.
Yeah,
and it's kind of a funny one.
Yeah, it really kind of is. But everybody, we hope you enjoy this episode. So Jim, we're about 10 episodes into the Because
We Want to
podcast, and how do you feel the usage of Anchor.fm's gone for us?
Yeah, I'm glad we found it. It's awesome because we're just getting started, so it's actually free, which is great.
Absolutely.
We can definitely make some money on the podcast, which is a nice touch, but, we're just getting started, so free is awesome.
Yes.
The creation tools are great where you can actually record and edit right from a phone or computer. We've got some higher-end equipment we're using, but the fact that you're able to do all the editing on all the episodes is pretty awesome. And if you can figure it out, I think pretty much anybody can figure it out.
What do you mean by that?
Also, great feature, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you. We are now on pretty much every major platform out there, which is great. It's awesome to see listens across all the platforms. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And also like the fact of how easy it is. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Because
We Want to
podcast. This evening, we're going to have, it's a special treat for everybody. We actually have Erika Martin back. Everybody liked her so much they wanted her back. Actually, wait. Is that where we're going with this?
What?
Is that why we're having her back? Because everybody liked her?
100%. They don't want to listen to us.
Okay.
Bring her back on.
All right. So, and also we're going to touch a little bit on a special topic tonight. Going to kind of follow or kind of explore a little bit of Zach's World, as he likes to say on his Facebook page. With April being Autism Awareness Month, we thought that it would be a good place to go and bring Erika back, since she does have some firsthand experience with this topic, raising a kid for 21 years.
So to graduate too, right? Is that next month?
Yes, next month he graduates.
That's awesome.
Yeah, congratulations to him.
All right, Erika. So here's what we want to focus on is just to get some insight on the beginning, the middle, the today. Obviously it's been a long process. So you said Zach is 22 years old now. How did that all begin? Like when he was born, was there any indication, or how was he when he was a baby, a toddler? I know sometimes in my discovery, sometimes you can learn this quickly. Sometimes it takes years. With my son, we didn't find out until this year, and he's 5.5 now. So how did that kind of begin for you?
So when Zach was born, obviously there weren't any sort of indications at that point. He seemed to be developing normally, like any other child would. He, sat up, crawled, walked. He did walk early. He was developing words early. So everything seemed to be fairly typical to any other child that would develop. When he was about 8 months old, he started walking. He started to gain some words at about 12 months. He didn't talk like Einstein would have, in his heyday, but he did have some basic words. And by about 13 months, he had about a good 10, 12 words, and that, like coherent words. So when he was 13 and a half months, his sister was born. My kids are very close together, and there were some things that I started picking up on. And at first we thought it was just because he wasn't the baby anymore. He had all of that attention to himself for 13 months. All of a sudden, here comes somebody new into his world, and he didn't like it at all. I made the mistake, I remember one day, of wrapping his sister up into his favorite blanket. And I had laid her on the couch and turned around to do something. And when I turned back, he had the corner of the blanket and he had started pulling it. So she was kind of like unraveling, like a burrito falling apart. And all of a sudden I could see her coming towards the edge of the couch, and I quickly ran over there and caught her before she fell on the floor. And I realized at that point, okay, he's very, very jealous of her, and understandably so. All of a sudden, now I've got my attention divided between two kids. And so he stopped using his words at about that same time. And at the time, we thought it was just that he stopped using them because his world was changing. And it was, but he didn't gain them back. It wasn't like his sister was there for a while and he started becoming used to that and started doing the things that he used to do. That's when I noticed that he would sit in his high chair and he would flap his hands, or he would rock back and forth we'd have to stop him. He would do it for, 10, 15, 20 minutes. He would just keep doing it, like banging his head up against the back of the chair. And then we noticed he would start taking little matchbox cars and start lining them up. And while that might seem typical of a child to do, it was more than just that. He was counting them over and over and over again. And then he would take the cars and turn them over and just run his fingers along the wheels and just spin them over and over and over again. He wasn't using toys like a neurotypical child would use them. And when I say neurotypical, I mean a child that would develop like a typical child would. He wasn't using toys the way they were intended to be used. He was using them in a very different way. And I knew something was different. I knew, even though he was my first child, I had been around children enough that I knew that something was very different than what I had seen other children behave like. And it was he was around maybe 17 or 16, 17 months old when I had an issue of Good Housekeeping magazine. It was something that I had just picked up off the stand, and it said something about autism. And I remember it was an article that talked about the signs of children that tend to have classic autism, that tend to have those classic regression, not necessarily symptoms, but that those key things that you can notice that kids classically regress with, where they gain language but then they lose it. Right around that 13 to 18-month-old period of time, where they start doing the hand flapping, or they don't make eye contact, or they start doing what's called self-stimulation, which is exactly, when I started reading it, I thought, oh my gosh, that's what he's doing with these cars. He's self-stimulating his brain by doing these repetitive motions. And all of a sudden, everything started clicking and became clear to me that maybe this is what we're looking at, is maybe Zach is not developing like a neurotypical child. Maybe Zach is an autistic child. And the other thing too is that we could talk to him and he wouldn't make eye contact with us. And it was almost as if he was ignoring us. And so then we started thinking, is he going deaf? Because there was no recognition to anything that we were saying. And one of the things in the article talked about how autistic people can tend to have they can hear different frequencies. He could stand outside, and we actually had him tested. I'll back up just a little bit. We actually had him tested for his hearing, and his hearing was just fine. In fact, it was better than fine. He would stand outside and he would look up at the sky, and we thought that it was just one of those self-stim things again. And all of a sudden he would point up and we're like, what are you looking at, buddy? And then all of a sudden a plane would come into view. He could hear that plane before we could even see it.
Wow.
And the frequencies in the hearing test that he was hearing, we couldn't hear. So it wasn't his hearing. And so as I read this article, all the things started to click for me. But then I didn't know where to go with it. Okay, so my child is developing differently. Who do I even talk to about this? Now, keep in mind, this was like 21 years ago.
That's what I was just thinking, yeah. Today, I was struggling, we didn't know what to do today. I can only imagine 20 years ago.
Just blame it on just blame it on Y2K, right?
Right. So when you think of like even today, and you hear so much about autism, and it's in the news, it's you see commercials about Autism Awareness Month, and there are so many resources available in the schools, and even still it doesn't feel like enough. Like even still you're probably feeling so new to this world and you don't even know where to start. So 20 something years ago, even further beyond that, I remember going to school with kids who, now that I look back on it, and now that I've worked in special education, and now that I have a child that's on the spectrum, I look back at some of the students I went to school with, and I can clearly see that, yes, these kids were on the spectrum, 30, 40 years ago.
They didn't fit
a lot
the
of
mold
those
back then, though, because the mold was so different. Like the way
right.
It was like, okay, if you don't fit these 2 or 3 different things, then you're not autistic. You're just a brat.
Either that, or
right,
they classified you as mental retarded.
Yeah,
exactly. That's where I was. That's where I was going with it. They would considered you mentally challenged, or in a scientifically way that I'm going to use this term, mentally retarded, and they would put you in these special education classes that segregated you from the rest of the students. And so I'm just so thankful that Zach was born during a time where he wasn't segregated like that. But I look back in the past, in history, and look at see how people like our children, like yours, Jim, and mine, were treated. And I'm just thankful that we live in a day and age where things are so much clearer now, and we don't have to worry about that kind of thing. But 20 years ago, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to turn to. But it said something at the end of the article that stuck with me, and it said about a child development center, that you could contact a child development center near you. And so that was the thing that I started looking for. Of course, 20 years ago, I didn't have a cell phone, so I'm looking through the yellow pages and the white pages and trying okay, where do I even find
Wait, what are those again?
I'm sorry. You could have gone to askjeeves.com back in 2001.
on your AOL dial-up?
Yeah,
you could even print it out. You could even print it out a MapQuest.
I didn't even own a cell phone until like the mid 2000s. I was one of those last holdouts. Like, no, I'm not going to do this. I don't need to be connected to everything and everybody until I got stuck in Belgium, missing my flight, and had to, figure out a way to call home because they rerouted me, through completely different states, and had to find a way home.
And now people can't even go to the bathroom without their cell phone.
Right. And I was like, maybe I should get a cell phone.
Right. And you're currently on your cell phone recording this, so yeah.
So, 21 years ago, I started looking through, the white pages and the yellow pages to find some sort of human resources organization in my area. And it did turn out that I found one. So Zach was about 18 months old at the time. And I found the Child Development Clinic in our area. And it was very small. Being in Vermont, it was very rural. So we didn't even have a lot of resources. And so I called them up, and they sent a gentleman over who did kind of like a working diagnosis. You know, he wasn't credentialed to give a full-blown doctor's diagnosis, but somebody that could evaluate Zach and say, well, yes, he does need some speech therapy, or he needs some occupational therapy. He needs some physical therapy. Yes, there's something different going on here, and we can help him, but we can't actually diagnose him. But it was a start. And so that's where we got started. Just having that one contact made a huge difference for us. So until Zach was 3 years old, we had somebody coming to the house once a week, working with him, with both, because he still didn't talk at that point. He had still given up his words. And so it wasn't until he was almost 5 years old that he really started talking again. And so before that, it was more, you know, speech therapy, just getting his mouth to move, the sensory issues, having an OT come over and or occupational therapist and having a physical therapist come over and work with all his fine motor skills. He had some gross motor skills, but the fine motor skills were missing. Up until he was 5 years old, we had to hand feed him. He didn't want food on his face. He didn't want to hold a fork or a spoon. So it was great to have all these people involved in his life, but we still didn't know exactly what we were dealing with. And eventually we were able to get an appointment with a doctor in the state who did an evaluation. And this is so long ago, I'm trying to remember all the pieces to it, but it was, I think, 3 different evaluations, speech and motor skills and just behavior. Like, we had to step out of the room so that they could observe him being with other people, because kids act differently with their parents than they're with somebody else. And eventually we did get that diagnosis. At the time, we got a diagnosis of what's called PDD/NOS. It stands for pervasive developmental disorder / not otherwise specified. It was one of those diagnoses that's no longer even acknowledged in the diagnostic statistic manual of mental disorders. They don't even acknowledge that diagnosis anymore.
So basically those words just all mean we have no idea what's going on.
Well, yes and no. So it was kind of one of those catch-all diagnoses for, we don't really know what's going on. Maybe in a couple years we can define your child's behavior differently or their neurological disorder differently. Let's give it a couple years and reevaluate. Or, in my case, it was your husband doesn't want to acknowledge what's going on. So instead of giving your child the diagnosis of autism, which your husband is vehemently against, we'll give him this one because this one seems less threatening.
And I didn't mean to sound insincere when I said that. I mean, what you said in your explanation is kind of more or less what I was going to, and thank you for saying it so much more eloquently than I did.
Which
no, I knew where you were going.
It doesn't take much to be more eloquent than Patrick.
Hey, them fighting words, mine.
So when you were saying that, though, one thing that popped into my head was, and we've gone through so much information over the last year between all the testing and the therapy and all that stuff. So I might be a little off on this one, but there was something along the lines of they typically things change when the kids get to be like around like 7 years old, 8 years old. And that's kind of what I've heard a couple times where, like with the testing with Micah, they were like, well, we're not 100% certain, but the tendencies are all here. As he grows older, they'll start to become more obvious. It'll progress differently. Obviously the brain development of the child, I mean, that's going to continue for a long time. So I don't know if you've heard anything like that throughout the process that you were with Zach.
Well, like I like to tell people, when you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. They're all so different, and that's why they call it a spectrum, because there's many different variations on that spectrum. There can be autistic people that are nonverbal. There can be autistic people that have a very limited vocabulary. There are autistic people that are very articulate and wordy. And, you know, like if you think to people like Temple Grandin, and I don't know, I know you mentioned her in the last segment that we did, where she went to college. She's a brilliant mind, has come up with these amazing inventions. There are autistic people that will never have a romantic relationship, just because of who they are. But then there's others that get married and have families, and I have a friend who has a master's degree, a couple of them, I believe, and she's married and has a little girl, and so there's all these different variations. And so with Zach around that 7 to 8 year old mark, there were certain things that did click for him, but I can't necessarily say that that's something that happens with every autistic person.
Right.
We have a friend whose child is autistic, but also has other neurological disorders with that make him be nonverbal, and he lives in a group home so that he has somebody to take care of him. He's still dependent on somebody taking care of every one of his physical needs. So there's this huge spectrum of autism. It can be, and the other thing too is that you might hear a lot of people say high functioning autism or mid functioning or low functioning. And that wording is actually, if you talk to autistic people that are able to articulate their thoughts on that, they'll tell you straight out that that's extremely offensive wording.
I've heard that.
Yeah, because it comes across, every person is valuable, and everybody, every autistic person has value just like any neurotypical person or anybody. And a lot of them will tell you, to say something like somebody's low functioning, it puts a lesser value on that person when they have just as much value as someone who might be classified as high functioning. So that's like, when I say it's a spectrum, people can be nonverbal, people can be very verbal. There are other people that like to categorize them in low, mid, and high, but I like to think of it as they're differently abled. A friend of mine shared that term with me one time. She's like, our kids are differently abled. They all have abilities. They just might be different than somebody else's. Society likes to put people in boxes. We like to label people. But, if you ask any autistic person that's able to articulate that to you, they'll be like, I'm just different.
Yeah.
I'm not mid, high, or low. I'm just different.
Yeah. And every time you talk about the verbal, all I keep thinking about is my son is so verbal that he just doesn't stop talking.
No, and I can definitely vouch for that.
Once he's comfortable with you, he doesn't stop talking.
No, he doesn't necessarily even have to be comfortable. He can meet you and know you for 30 minutes.
And the thing with him too, and this is where it's confusing to me, so I never want to be offensive to anybody, but if you were to just sit down and my son was comfortable with you, you'd never have a clue that he was autistic. You wouldn't even have a clue. And I had been using the high functioning term in the beginning to make myself feel better.
Right.
Because I was struggling with this. Because I wanted an answer, and then when I got the answer, I was like, I don't love this answer, God. You're killing me. Like, what are you doing to me? And 3 seconds later, I'm like, I don't really care. Like, now we have something to work towards. Now we know what we can do, and it's a learning process. And if it wasn't for my wife, I think I would have lost my mind by now, because I have such a short fuse, and all this stuff is so hard for me. And I'm not a very extroverted person, so like this stuff, it gets hard for me, and I don't even want to talk about it. So I'm just kind of like, and I'm getting to the point now where I'm like, you know what, I'm proud of my kid, and I'm glad we're taking the steps to address this and help, because right now he's 5, so now we can take all these steps to just set him up for success in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. That was something that I struggled with my ex-husband. He went through speech therapy when he was a kid. He had a little bit of a stutter and, mispronounced certain letters, certain sounds. And so he was always picked on in grade school when he had to get taken out of class to go to speech therapy. And now it's not as conspicuous. They kind of work things into class, or kids have one-on-one interventionists. That's actually what I used to do in the public school system. I was an interventionist, a behavioral interventionist, and so I worked one-on-one with students in the main classroom. But my ex-husband always felt like he was less than because he had to have help. And so when Zach started developing differently, I think that scared him. He looked at that as, what if somebody makes fun of my kid? What if my kid gets bullied in school? And I remember him saying, no, my kid can't be autistic because I don't make non-perfect things. And that, as a mother, just cut me to the core, because it's, no child is non-perfect. They're perfect to every mother. And it goes back to saying, like, every person has value. How we determine that value, unfortunately, as society, like, we put that value in different degrees. But he was very resistant to the idea of having him diagnosed as autistic, which is why the doctor gave him this catch-all, like, okay, well, it's not so bad now. And I remember people would ask us, oh, well, what's wrong with your kid, or what's different about your kid? And I would say, well, he's autistic. No, he's PDD/NOS. And then he would go into this whole description of what that is. It's like, dude, you're describing autism. So
you can label it whatever you want, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. And so but the thing was that autism diagnosis is what got Zach the services that we needed. And I kept trying to explain this to my ex-husband. I kept saying, it's not a bad thing to get help. If we find out later on down the road that there's nothing different about him and he didn't need this help, then what have we hurt? If anything, getting him the help shows that we love him and we want to set him up for success rather than failure. And I'm really glad that I pushed as hard as I did and advocated as a mother, knowing my child the best. I'm really glad that I pushed through, and all those years of being married to him, I can count on one hand how many times he came to a doctor's visit, or came to a parent school conference, or an IEP meeting. I did it all pretty much on my own with the help of doctors and the school, but I didn't have a team. There was not a husband and wife team to do that with. And so I'm really glad that I pushed and that we got the diagnosis, because it's what opened up this whole world of success for Zach.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I knew we were going to talk about parent advocacy, but I didn't know it was going to go down that train. And I don't know the man, so I won't say anything negative. But as a person who's dealt with a difficult parent, I won't go down that train now. But as much as I've struggled trying to be there for my son, you just do what you got to do. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I never thought you were going to tell us that you had to advocate with your son's dad. Like, that never even crossed my mind, because I could never imagine having to deal with that. That's just, to me, that's just, I understand. I do understand. I think I understand his thought process for about 10 seconds, because that's about the 10 seconds that I had. And then I said, Jim, get over it. Figure it out. Time to be a dad. And after that 10 seconds, I was like, okay, let's buck up and let's do this. And I've made 1,000 mistakes since that day. But the only thing that not the only thing, but one of the things that keep me going is I know I'm just trying to do my best. I'm trying to learn every day. My wife and I constantly talk. So there, I did it again with the ums. We're working on that, guys. I promise. Yeah. So what I want to ask you about, though, is we talk about, you've mentioned IEP, you've mentioned schooling. We're lucky now. Micah's going to go into kindergarten with an IEP, and we're grateful for that. And we've got that situation set up, and it's been, compared to what I've heard of stories, it's a lot easier for us today than it has been. So when did that process start for you and Zach?
So that actually started when Zach was 3 years old in Vermont. We didn't really have a preschool like you have down here, where there is a lottery system down here for preschool, for pre-K. In Vermont, it was the only preschools that they had were private preschool, and then there was one preschool in our town, and it was specifically for children that were differently abled. So it was called the Triple E program, which meant early essential education, and it was for kids that needed kind of a head start, that needed therapies that could be worked into the preschool day, during the school day. So of course, Zach fell within the qualifications for that. There were some kids that were neurotypical children that were allowed to come to the school. It was a very small lottery, maybe 5 kids total, but also we lived in a much smaller area. It wasn't Richmond Hill. This was a very small demographic, but they had kids, neurotypical kids, in the preschool. So that the kids that were on the spectrum or differently abled could have behavior that they could model after, that they could have kids that they could take turns having conversations with. No different than a lot of like ABA therapy that, sometimes use another child to kind of bounce social etiquette off of, things like that. So Zach went to preschool from 3 to 5. So that IEP, which stands for people that don't know, stands for Individualized Education Plan. That IEP started in preschool at age 3 because it was part of the public school system. So that IEP started then and followed him and just has been changed throughout the years all the way up until now at 22. So it did start early for him. For kids that aren't diagnosed, they don't have that IEP. They might have a paraeducator that can help them in the classroom with their curriculum or whatever, they might need. But that IEP was so important so that Zach could get the exact services that he needed.
So how you guys were in Vermont pretty much, though. I know last time we spoke you had moved around, but prior to here, were you in Vermont the whole time, or was it New
Yes,
Hampshire?
so Zach was born in Vermont, and we moved when he was 18
Okay.
down here to Richmond Hill.
So he... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so he went all the way up to 18 years old in the school system in Vermont.
Okay, so that whole process there pretty much, I would assume, stayed consistent because he started with the IEP, they knew him, and it was probably easy. So, I mean, I'm sure there's some details in there that we're probably going to jump into at some point between, pre-K and 18 years old. But for someone coming into Richmond Hill, this could be valuable too. So how did that process work for you for getting that essentially ready to go here and get him ready?
Oh, so that scared me big time because I had never had my kids outside of one school district. He went to the preschool, and then it just slid right into kindergarten, into the elementary school, slid right into middle school, and then right into high school. So we were in the same district. We never moved out of the district. So everything was very seamless. Coming into an entirely different state, not just even into a different school, but into another state, that scared me because I didn't know what to do. Everything always just followed along with him throughout the district in Vermont. Coming down here, we were very fortunate. I was scared, but it wasn't as scary. It didn't turn out to be as scary. The school here was very willing to work with us. When we registered him for the school, they plugged me right in with the special education team here. I had his records all transferred, his transcript, his IEP, everything, all of his doctor's information all transferred to the school. So my district actually did that for me. They just transferred it all down. So once Richmond Hill had a hold of it, they started working with their teams behind the scenes, getting everything in place, so that all we had to do was sit down at a meeting. When the first day of school, when I brought them into Richmond Hill, we sat down with the special education team, and they had the IEP already written. They'd already read it. The team had already gone over it, so they knew who was coming into their school. And so they knew a little bit about Zach. They knew his background. They knew his diagnoses. They knew they had already read his IEPs. They had already read his evaluations, like his psychological evaluations, all those things. So they were very proactive at the high school. Now, I don't have any experience with any of the younger schools. Zach has only been in the high school here, but it was obvious that I made the right choice to move to Richmond Hill instead of, going into Chatham County. Everybody told us to come to Richmond Hill. But so they got him, into the classroom, and then they scheduled another meeting with me so that we could really hone that IEP according to their educational program, which was very different from what Zach was used to. In Vermont, he was part of a hands-on, inclusive community program. It was actually part of the public school system, but it was kind of like an offshoot of it. And he spent most of his time doing internships in the community. At the recycling center, he worked on a farm. He was part of the bird banding program. He would do landscaping projects, all these different things out in the community. So being here was a little different because everything is based in the school. But I do have to say that if anybody's coming into Richmond Hill with a child on the spectrum or with special needs that are differently abled, I have heard nothing but great things about the younger schools. Like I said, I haven't been in them, but I've heard that it's very similar to the high school. They make it very easy to transition. They try to make it as seamless as possible.
Yeah, I would second that with my short experience so far. I mean, in the COVID world, we had our Zoom call with the IEP, and they had his current teacher from his private school on there, and they had a couple other people on there as well. I can't remember everybody, so I apologize. But the experience was good, and then I know the IEP situation is public school only. I know there's a rule after 12 months, but even though he's not in public school yet, because he was approved for it and he's going to be going to the Richmond Hill Primary next year, they've started the IEP now. So she's actually working with him once a week already. Plus, we're in the process of ABA conversation, getting that set up, and then also OT because he's got some reaction to some sensory stuff. So we're concerned there. I did want to ask you, and I know this can go in 20,000 different directions. Everybody has an opinion, but you've experienced it. And I'm sure you know when I ask this question, you're going to understand my tone 100%. What are your feelings on ABA therapy?
So I actually have a friend, one of my best friends here. She is an ABA therapist. And it was actually something that I asked her about recently. So Zach has been in ABA therapy before, and I had no problems with it at all. I think that he learned a lot. He developed a lot. He grew a lot. As parents, when they came to our house and did ABA, of course, my ex-husband was there, so he kind of was forced to be a part of it. But I felt very much a part of the therapy. Our therapist included us in it, helped us to see what we could do to help Zach outside of therapy. You know, when the therapist walked out the door, I knew what to do to help him continue to grow. My best friend here is an ABA therapist, and so I recently asked her about it because I have heard people talk about ABA being a not so great therapy. Like, I'm kind of not using probably the right words, but she's an amazing therapist. And she explained to me the difference between the two different perspectives. And what I see her doing, with the way she works with her kids is very different from some of the traumatic experiences that other people have said that their kids have gone through or that they've gone through one time as kids and now they're adults. I think there's a right way to do it, and I think there are people that do it very wrong. So I think as a parent, you need to be very involved, like, seeing how your therapist works with your kid and find out, do the research and see what people are saying about it from both perspectives. Mm-hmm. And then if you feel that ABA therapy is being done wrong, then find a therapist who you feel comfortable with that's doing it right. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it does. And I'm the type of person, my wife would second this, that if I need to research something or if I'm into something, good luck, I won't go to sleep that night or for the next 5 minutes. It doesn't matter. So I've tried to do my best researching. Plus, my wife has done a lot of research in ABA therapy, and you're right. There's good and there's bad. And then also my opinion is there needs to be an understanding that ABA therapy 20 years ago isn't the same that it is today.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean that there's not people who are doing it the 20-year ago way. And just like you said, you need to do your research. And based on what we had discovered and actually watching some TED Talks from autistic people that had gone through ABA who had their opinion of it, that forced me to do some more research. And I can tell you that the ABA therapists that we're going to utilize, I think we're like 99% sold, because I don't think I can ever be 100% sold on anything. But they've met with us multiple times. They've sat down with us. They've had conversations with us. They've made sure that we feel comfortable, and they've made it very clear that we lead the process. We are, if we don't want something done, it's not going to be done. If we don't, we've basically laid out the guidelines of what we want to work on with our son, and we want them to help us with. So that right there kind of makes me feel really, really comfortable. And the great thing about it is I'm not signing a contract. In 6 months, if it's not helping or I don't like the way they're doing it and they're not, adjusting, which I highly doubt is going to be the case based on current conversations, I'm pulling them out. It's just the way it works. It can go one way or the other, but I get such a great vibe from these ladies that I'm just excited to have him there because I think it's really going to help him. I just want him to be successful.
Yeah, I think that's part of the whole parent advocacy is that you really do need to be a part of any sort of therapies that are taking place. I think for some people it can be easy to just say, well, I'll let them take care of this part. But the therapies work if you're watching what's being done so you can create a consistent environment at home.
They also said they're going to train us as parents to work with him at home as well, which I was excited for.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely what you want. And it's hard to be a parent advocate if you just, if you're just dropping your kid off for therapy, but you don't actually see what's going on. It's hard to know what to advocate for unless you're actually there and being a part of it.
Right.
And it's work. It takes time. It's time out of your schedule. It's learning how to see the world differently and act differently. And that's kind of why Zach calls it his world.
Mm-hmm.
We expect people on the spectrum to fit into our world without realizing that there's a lot that we can gain from theirs. We don't need them to live in our world. We kind of need to create one together. And Zach will sometimes say, sometimes I feel like it's all about me. But it's not, is it? and I think, as neurotypicals, we sometimes think it's all about us and we need to conform them to fit into our world, where it's probably the other way around. Like, we can each fit here. We just kind of have to combine the two. And sometimes I wonder if we're the neurodiverse ones and they're the neurotypicals, because they have. How about
we're just all neurodiverse and just call it a day? We just all fit together.
I actually have kind of a theory on that. Like, I earlier on, both of y'all mentioned that it's kind of looked down upon to classify them as high functioning, mid functioning, low functioning. What if everybody who is actually in the autism spectrum is actually ultra functioning, and the reason why they have sometimes such a hard time communicating is because their brains go in such a higher speed than we can even think about, and that's why they may have issues communicating or whatnot, because with that you also a lot of times with people who are autistic you get the connection also with savantism, how they can excel extremely well in certain aspects, like for instance your son with his artwork and
that show Good Doctor,
right?
That's legit stuff, like from what I've discovered.
Right, and also the going to the movie Rain Man, where he was phenomenal with numbers and math and stuff like that. So what if it really is kind of like how you said that we are the ones who aren't there, and they are the neurotypical ones because their brains are just functioning on such a so much higher level that we could even contemplate and think of,
So based on your assessment, there's zero chance that you're autistic. Okay.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, Zach, we often say that he is like his brain is working faster than his mouth can put the words out sometimes. He's already his brain has already processed something before we're done talking, and he's already on to the next question. He's already figured it out. We're like 2 steps behind him.
And that's exactly what I'm kind of meaning by this. Like, they're like I said, they might have a hard time communicating with us because, their brain is ultra functioning.
And they've also, I've during my studies, and I think we might have touched upon this last time, maybe in our prep before the last conversation we had. They've actually had indications that some of these famous people from the early 1900s, like Einstein, for example, showed signs of autism.
Yeah, because he didn't talk till he was like 4 years old.
So there's a potential, like, that it just obviously wasn't diagnosed back then. But, you know, you typically find that
Right.
a lot of these people that are on the spectrum are extremely intelligent, which makes me annoyed that annoyed is probably the wrong word. I'm trying not to be explicit, that they used to diagnose these people as mentally retarded. And I mean, I'm glad that that kind of term has kind of come out because they've kind of ruined it. It was a medical term and people have ruined it. But, you know, it's not even that they're different. We're all different. It's just like, I don't even know how to say it. We're all different. I mean, if someone knows me, trust me, I am an introvert. If you walk in a room and see me, I'm different than I am right now on this video call.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you've never met me, you're going to look at me and have an opinion. And that's part of the problem with this world. And also I throw opinions at people based on things. And, you know, my son throws a tantrum. And we don't even call it a tantrum anymore because it's not. It's a legit meltdown, and it's not even a bad way. It's like you can't even call it a tantrum anymore. So when someone looks at my kid, like I used to be like, okay, that's my kid. I'm sorry. Now I'm just like, I don't know you. I don't care about what your opinion is right now. My focus is on this guy, and there's something wrong.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that really stuck with me when I was doing some different, like I've been to different trainings on, you know, in autism and conferences and things like that over the years. As a parent, you can get invited to these things, you know, to be part of symposiums and hear keynote speakers. And one of the segments was on communication. And one of the things that came up was that a lot of people think that kids on the spectrum are having a meltdown or they're having a tantrum or whatever it might be. And really most of the time it's a communication issue. They're not behaving badly. They're trying to communicate, but they don't understand or can't process how to communicate in the way that we are expecting them to.
Right.
We're expecting them to use words, and they might not have all the words to say that, or their emotions might feel differently than the way that we feel them. Like we both might feel anger, but they express it differently than we do.
Yeah.
And so most of those times when we think that they're behaving badly, it's that they're trying to communicate. It's not that they're being a brat. They're not being obnoxious. They're not being bad. They're not being naughty. They're trying to find a way to communicate with us. And it's a level of frustration that, like, I want to say something, I just don't know how, and this is how I'm manifesting this frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Where when you try to break it down and you de-escalate that, if you learn how to speak the language of their behavior and you learn to figure that out and you take the time, why is he acting this way? What is he trying to get from me? What does he need? It really changes the way you think and you look at, especially children, when
Mm-hmm.
there's so much that they're trying to develop in their brains and they're trying to figure out, you know, like these kids they might not talk the same way we do. They might not have the same language ability. They might not have the same processing. So how do we figure out what they want? You know, that was a huge game changer for me. I remember Zach breaking down in the drugstore one day. We were standing at the checkout and he just had this, he fell on the floor and he was crying. And I remember this lady behind me telling me, you need to spank your kid, or you need to beat that out of him. And it was the most offensive thing too.
Wow.
And she was just so mean about it. And really what he wanted was a pack of M&Ms, which I certainly would have bought him. I just didn't understand it at the time. He didn't have the words to tell me. And I just, he kept like pulling on me, and that was just annoying me. And I didn't understand that's what he wanted. He wanted to ask me for that pack of M&Ms that he could see at the register. And once I remember sitting down with him in the store and just kind of like cradling him in my arms and just said, what do you want, buddy? Like, I don't understand. It's okay. All the while, this lady's telling me to beat my kid. And eventually he got to the point where he could point to it and tap on it. And I was like, is that what you want? I'm like, M&Ms. And he kind of was like, yeah, that's what I want. I mean, he didn't say those words because he didn't have the words, but he didn't know how to communicate that to me. And to anybody else, it might have seemed like some naughty child throwing an absolute temper tantrum in the middle of a store. But all he wanted was M&Ms. And it wasn't that I was telling him, no, you can't have them, and then he threw a temper tantrum. He just didn't even know how to tell me in the first place. And yeah, so just understanding that their language is different than ours, or their communication style might be different than ours, and learning how to figure that out was was just massive for me.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, because it's something that I've struggled with, because I was taught, look at somebody when you're talking to them or acknowledging them, and I've gotten better over these last few weeks. I've tried to be intentional, because he doesn't always look at me, but he's listening, or he nods after I ask him a couple times. But when you were telling that story, one thing that popped into my head was from one of the TED Talks I had watched, and they were talking about the exact same thing. Obviously different story, different context, but this essentially the same thing. And one thing that they said, and I'm probably going to quote this incorrectly, but they basically said, you wouldn't expect a deaf person to hear you. You wouldn't expect a deaf person to speak the way you speak, basically. Like, unless they have something implanted or whatever, obviously they can't hear you. Like, if there's no additional help, they're not going to be able to hear you. They're not going to be able to communicate with you in the same way. They may have to write it down, or, there's going to be a lack of communication. So same concept. You shouldn't expect someone who can't come up with the words or can't communicate to communicate the same way that you want. It's just not fair. Or if you meet someone who doesn't speak English, there's no way to, you have to find a different way to communicate. So you have to learn how to adjust and communicate. And when you have an autistic kid, it's not a one-time thing. You have to figure it out and work together to find that balance. So when did you feel like you struck that balance with Zach, where, like, how old was he? If you ever have, I mean, I know stuff changes all the time, but when did you strike that balance with him?
I feel like we struck that balance when he was around 5 or 6. Like when he was entered grade school, I felt like things finally started clicking. For the longest time, he and his sister were inseparable. They're 13 months apart. So, when she reached, I think, like 2, they were close enough in age, and she was already walking and talking and everything. She was very precocious at that age. But they were very inseparable, and there were a lot of times that we couldn't understand what he was trying to tell us. When he was like getting to that 4 and 5 age, and she actually was like his little interpreter. He would try to be using words. He would struggle using them. And, they played together. They weren't in school yet, so they were always together, and they shared a room. And so we'd have to ask her, like, what is he trying to say? And she would interpret for him. Back then we used to go to church, and they would go to, like the nursery or Sunday school, and they always kept them together. The teachers always kept them together because they knew that she would be able to communicate for him. And so when he entered grade school, kindergarten, first grade, he started picking up more language. It still was very stunted, 2, 3 word, 4 word sentences, but he could start to communicate with us. And so we finally understood what he wanted. For the longest time, it was grunts and screams. And I remember he wanted, he loved warm milk, loved to drink warm milk. And so we couldn't figure, this was another communication thing. He wanted to tell us that he wanted warm milk, but we didn't understand what he was asking. And he kept lighting the gas stove. My parents, and we had,
that could go so many ways.
Yeah. Well, the thing was, we didn't have a microwave.
Won't give me warm milk, I'm going to burn the house down.
Well, we didn't have a microwave, so we used the stovetop to warm up his milk in the pan because he loved it warm. And so to him, that was where the milk came from. And so we were at my parents' one day, and my brother or my mom, I can't remember who, had left a pot holder on one of the burners by accident. And unlike an electric stove where you turn on and it gradually warms up, with a propane, gas stove, it just right away. Mm-hmm. Yes. And all of a sudden I turn around and there he is clicking the knob because he knew that's what you had to do. And all of a sudden this pot holder went up in flames. And we're like, no, what's going on? Like, oh my gosh, he's learned how to, fight with fire. And like, this is going to be a problem. But it was never a problem after that, because then we realized what he wanted. Like, he wanted the milk.
Smart. He's putting 2 and 2 together. I mean, that's just smart.
Yeah.
He's just forgetting the middleman, which is mom, to warm up the milk.
So we had to tell him, like, no, this is bad. You can't just start. And then what he did was, like, at first we just thought he was lighting things on fire. But then he went to the place where my mom kept her pans and pulled out a pot and went to go, like, in his little, 3-year-old hands, and went to try to go put it on top of the stove. And we're like, oh, he wants warm milk. Okay, now we get it. So ding. Then it got to ding. And so then he would, like, point, point to the stove or bring us a pot to let us know that that's what he wanted rather than lighting things on fire. He's never lit anything else up again since then. But yeah, it was just yeah. When he started using his words, it obviously was a whole lot easier. But yeah, we finally felt like that clicking point was when he entered grade school. And now, when you talk to Zach, you'll notice that there's something different about him. He might look like, any other 22-year-old man. Sometimes I forget that he's not a boy anymore, that he's actually grown.
I know, I keep calling him a kid too, and I'm just like, I feel so
old. He'll always be my baby. He'll always be my boy, my kid. But, he's a 6'5", 230-pound man.
Yeah, he is a tall
yeah,
guy.
he is. He's a big young man. But, when you look at him, you think, okay, that's a 22-year-old man. But when you talk to him, you do notice that there's something very different about Zach. And so, he has all of his words. He does use them. He's very verbal now. For the longest time, I would hear people say, "Oh, my kid doesn't stop talking." And I was like, I would give anything just to have a conversation with this kid. And then that time came, and now he does talk all the time.
Yeah, your son doesn't like using commas and periods. And when he talks, he just runs all in one sentence. Like the one time I've met Zach, that was the one thing that I noticed about him. Like you said, you said a minute ago that, he's already on to the next thing. Like I talked to him for 2 minutes, and I swear he brought up 10 different topics all in 2 minutes span, because he doesn't use the when he's talking, he doesn't use really many pauses. It's just all one breath almost. Like, okay, Zach, breathe.
And here's an interesting thing. He's 22 and he still has speech therapy. So part of his school services is that he still gets speech therapy. And a lot of people are like, but he already talks. Why does he need speech therapy? And so a lot of people don't realize that speech therapy is so much more than learning how to talk and how to make sounds correctly, and how to form words in the mouth, like you would do with, say, a younger kid when he had speech therapy. Mm-hmm. A lot of his speech therapy now is centered on conversations, mm-hmm. social etiquette, volume of his voice, not interrupting, taking turns in conversation. And so, and pausing and then waiting for somebody else to take a turn and say something that they're interested about. And so speech therapy is so much more than just learning how to speak. So he still does that, and still to get those services, and is still learning how to effectively use his voice. And part of that is learning, like lately on his speech therapy, it's about job interviews. Now that he's 22 and he has a job, but what if you might want a different job, or what if you want a second job? Well, how do you act in an interview? Like, how do you answer these questions? Or how do you greet somebody? How do you say goodbye? How do you ask for something? So these services, continue to go on even though he's 22 years old.
Right.
I can just see him now at the McDonald's interview, and they bring him in the kitchen to show him, and he sees the stove, and he goes, "I know how to turn that on."
Are we going to get milk?
Well, the first thing that he did when he met Patrick over at the McDonald's next to Publix was, I said, "So this is Mr. Patrick," and he looks at him and he goes, "Hi, Mr. Patrick Starfish." We clearly did not have the speech therapy about the job interview before that happened, but Patrick has a really good sense of humor, and
hey, that's probably what I got on the job.
Yeah,
if you make the person interview you laugh, you've got a good
you're pretty gold, yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead. You want to ask one?
Not really an ask, but a observation. A little while ago, you said you meet one autistic person, and I'm guessing, if I had to guess, that's where the whole logo behind the autism awareness and their foundations, kind of like all the puzzle pieces coming together, just because not just with autistic, but autism people, just like nobody's alike. And, everybody's different, just like every puzzle piece. But when you bring it together, it just forms one solid thing. And, so, I mean, that that logo, I think, is a kind of a great representation of what you said. And so
It's funny you say that, because there's people that actually find that logo offensive.
Yeah, I was
And
I
I would love to hear your take
bring
on
that
that.
up.
No, bring it. I mean,
Yeah,
this is
My
conversation. No, it's
no,
okay.
it's a good conversation.
Yeah. I mean, some people find it offensive,
I
and they
didn't
have
mean
their
it to
reasoning,
be
and
any
some people don't.
offensive.
What's your take on it, Erika?
Well, like Patrick, I think if people could take Patrick's perspective on it like that, I think it would mean something very different. I think that's Patrick's perspective is actually a positive one. When the puzzle piece first came out, it was that autism is a mystery. It's puzzling. These people are puzzling. And so that's where the offense by autistic people comes in, is like, we are not puzzling. Like, we are people. We are not a mystery. We are people. Like, just like everybody else is different, just like every neurotypical person is different from the one next to them, so are autistic people. I think if we looked at it more like Patrick does, it would seem so much more positive, like, hey, we're all unique, but when we all come together, we make this beautiful picture. If we could look at it, if it started like that, I think that's such a much better way to look at it. But yeah, there are people in the autistic world that do take offense to it, just because of the connotation of some of the organizations that look at autism as a thing to be cured, or as a bad thing, or as something that needs to be eradicated, because supposedly the world would be better if we were all neurotypical.
What is neurotypical?
So neurotypical.
No. I mean, no. I'm not asking you. I'm just asking, like, in general. Hey, okay, right. What is neurotypical?
Yeah, like,
explain to me exactly what is neurotypical. That is that's choosing.
Neurotypical, in my opinion, is whatever you feel is what you want everybody else to be. It's like when you look at someone, you judge them. And like, if I was someone who wanted to judge someone who's autistic, then I would view myself as neurotypical. But then again, if I'm doing that, then I'm judging everybody else. So what really is neurotypical?
Yeah, I mean, who's to say exactly what neurotypical is? I know science has their answers and stuff like that, but I mean, that's science's opinion. So what exactly? I mean, there's neurotypical, man, it's just whatever.
The bulk of society that develops in a certain way, I suppose, is where they like grade neurotypical people, and the neurodiverse people are the ones that think differently, that don't fit into that box. But it's like the Mad Hatter said, we're all kind of mad. We're all different. We've all got our uniqueness.
I think it's important to, I guess, not necessarily say label. Maybe there's a better way to say this, but I guess it's important to label certain things, because then that kind of helps you go in the right direction for the appropriate help. Because for example, if Zach was never labeled, even with the wrong label like he was, then you wouldn't have been able to start the process with the IEP and work on those things, because those programs require labels, unfortunately. I mean, that's what it comes with. But
it's true, they do. It's no different than if you needed chemotherapy for cancer. Like, without that diagnosis, you're not going to get that help.
Right.
And the brain is an organ, just like the liver or the heart or the kidneys would be. Sometimes sometimes people need help with certain things, and help to grow and develop and to nurture that person. And so without the diagnosis, unfortunately, that's how insurance works. That's how schools work. You're not going to get that help. It's not going to be funded. It's not going to be offered or accessible unless you have that diagnosis. You're not going to get an IEP unless you have a diagnosis.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's just the way it works. And so, it goes back to being an advocate for your child. Like, if you know that something is different, if you know that your child is not developing, like, say, your other child would be, or, like other neurotypical children, and you want to set them up for the best success, the best thing to do is to get that diagnosis. And if it turns out that diagnosis is not necessarily correct down the road, that can always be reevaluated later. But how is getting help for your kid a bad thing?
It's not.
And it's not, and that's what I really had to push for, with my ex-husband. It's like, it means that we loved him enough to want him to be the best.
I mean, it's like his
And
parents.
how is that ever going to be a bad thing?
I mean, and that's exactly like his parents got him help with his speech
Right.
issues back in the day. I
Yeah.
mean, what's the difference? Okay, your kid, Zach, may needed a little bit more help, but, he needed help too. So, I mean, there's not really much of a difference. And, I mean, earlier on when Jim said that he understood, for 10 seconds, I'm there with him. Like, I mean, I understand, because especially as a, being, stereotypical as a father and as a man, we're always, supposed to fix things. We're always supposed to make sure everything's perfect, like, typically. So, I mean, I understand where he comes from, but, at the same time, I know Jim and Nicole. I mean, yeah, Micah has autism. They don't care. They just want the best for him,
Right.
Yeah.
And just like,
And I
you
want
do with that.
COVID to end so his friends can come over so I can stop playing the Nintendo Switch 2-player. Because that's all I ever play 2-player daddy. I'll play 2-player daddy. And now he's discovered we could play 3-player. So Nicole looks at
Oh,
me like,
boy.
oh gosh. So that's always been fun.
Nicole's going to be inviting me over more.
Yeah. No, then he'll learn 4-player. We'll get one more controller. So the only other question that I have in my mind that I haven't asked yet, and if there's something that you think we've missed, by all means, throw it out there, is, Zach's 22, he's graduating soon, and the spectrum is so wide and so big. But is Zach going to be able to at some point go out on his own? Do you think he's going to be available, prepared for that?
Back maybe 5 years ago, that was kind of the goal, as a parent, that I wanted for him. And I think that every parent wants independence for their child. We raise our children to someday be independent adults, hopefully. We want to see them succeed. We want to see them grow and be on their own, whether it's having a family or, career or whatever. I would say 5 years ago, I would say that would have been possible. Now, I think we're looking at things a little bit differently. So Zach is not just autistic. Zach was also diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia back in February of 2020, and it was a diagnosis that we worked very hard to get. Not necessarily the schizophrenic diagnosis, but we knew there was something else going on, and we weren't sure exactly what it was. I took psychology classes in college. My degrees are in human services, and so that a lot of what I did was, in case management, psychology, sociology. Those were my majors, and so I understood a lot of different neurological disorders. So we weren't sure if we were dealing with bipolar or if we were dealing with something else. And the thing that came up was either bipolar or schizophrenia. And it was a 3-year process. It took about 3.5 years to get a diagnosis because schizophrenia develops later on. It's not a childhood thing. It usually develops, around the ages of like 17, 18 to like 25 is when you see schizophrenia really start to manifest. And sometimes that can look like bipolar disorder. But so doctors are very careful to evaluate and not just throw a diagnosis out there for the sake of doing it. They want to make sure that they get it right, again, for the services, and for accessibility and for insurance purposes, and also medication wise. You don't want to put exactly. You don't want to put somebody on a bipolar medication that might not necessarily work for schizophrenia or vice versa. And there are some medications that actually can help with both, but you don't want to just put somebody on a bunch of psychotropic medications or narcotics to numb them. You want them to be able to be on a medication so that it enhances their life, not numbs them from feeling everything and from, feeling human. So paranoid schizophrenia is a progressive disorder. It's not one that is going to get progressively better. It's one that eventually, like, you learn to manage it with medication and with cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's not something that is going to necessarily get better. And there's going to be a point where that management becomes harder. And so this is something that's still very new to us. I kind of figured that's where we were going with the diagnosis, but it was still very hard for me to process, knowing later on down the road that it might come to a point where Zach is not able to manage in the world with everybody else. That's a possibility. That's a very real possibility. There are people with schizophrenia that are fully able to have a job and manage up to certain points, but with Zach's schizophrenia, there's a lot embedded in that we're still learning and we're still figuring out. And a lot of his delusional thoughts are very hard on him. And I'm hesitant to share too much because, for one thing, I want to respect his dignity as a fellow human being, but also because we're still figuring it out.
Right.
And so, while I would love for Zach to someday be on his own, I really don't think that that's a possibility with what we've seen with his schizophrenia over the years. I could definitely see Zach being in, if someday he doesn't want to be, like, say he doesn't want to live at home anymore, like, I want to be more independent, I could definitely see him being like in a group home where maybe there's like, the group that oversight of, kind of like the den mother sort of thing, where he's living with some other folks that are just like him. And, they're able to work as like a symbiotic, what's the word I'm looking for?
Symbiotic environment.
Yes, yeah. I was like, my head was going into Star Trek, like the Borg, but that's not what I like a symbiotic unit,
So is that, so those group homes, is that, I mean, I don't want to compare. Is it almost like I don't want to say this, but the only thing I can think of, halfway house, kind of like type thing?
Well,
where
a halfway house is usually for people that are trying to.
Right.
They're usually for people that are addicted to a certain substance, and they're like specific, like substance abuse, and they're trying to get clean and sober.
But
a group home is more like an environment where people, that are differently able can live together, but they're like a cooperative unit. Like, everybody has their place within the home.
Is there someone that lives there that kind of like oversees it?
Yes, yeah. It's usually, so I don't want to call it like it's it's kind of like assisted living, but not in like the elderly sense.
I think that would help people understand it, though. I mean, that kind of makes sense.
Right, yeah. So I could definitely see that possibly in the future, but I really don't foresee Zach being completely on his own. That I don't see.
Okay.
And I didn't mean like halfway house, like, a negative connotations, like just
kind
of like what you were kind of saying, like where they live and have their own roles and like kind of stuff. They have their independence, but yet there's still people around them. Yeah, guidance and stuff like that.
Yes, yeah, like assisted living, sort of,
right.
but for people with different abilities.
We'll forgive your ignorance.
Assisted living is it was a better comparison than halfway house. Yeah, I will agree. I just couldn't think of assisted living. So Zach also, he has autism and he has, the paranoid schizophrenia. Is that typical for someone with autism to develop something else like that? I mean,
it's not necessarily like that particular disorder, but autism doesn't often come by itself.
Okay.
There's usually like ADHD, which Zach also has. There could be, it usually is like what they call comorbidity, where it's not just one thing, it's multiple things. It can be, oppositional defiance disorder, it can be ADD, it can be ADHD, it can be bipolar. OCD, yeah. So Zach also has clinical OCD. He's also ADHD, and Zach has a lot of sensory issues. So there's a lot going on for Zach. But the things that kind of manifest more than anything are, the autism, the OCD. Well, I guess they all kind of manifest. Now that I'm thinking about it, they kind of all they
You've
kind
just
of
kind
all
of
are
gotten
part
used
of who
to
he
it,
is.
so
Yeah, I'm so used to it that it's all kind of like this, big swirling part of who Zach is. It's like this is Zach. He just kind of whirls around us, and
Now, are some of his are some of those, are they more predominant on some days opposed to other days, and like?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. There are definitely things that he goes through cycles with his OCD. He's learned to manage a lot of those things very, very well. And there are some days that the schizophrenia manifests itself more than anything. Some things take over, then other things take over. One of his therapists always called Zach the whack-a-mole. Like, once you've got one thing kind of managed, another thing will pop up to take its place. And sometimes it can be completely new and different, and then we have to learn how to kind of make that behavior extinct. But
it's a lot of work.
I'm more about him managing than necessarily extinction, because some of the things that he does are very brilliant, and I don't want to extinguish who he is.
Like turning on a stove to get warm milk.
Right.
Although, I mean, some of his artwork is pretty impressive. It's pretty cool stuff. So, what do you? We've talked about a bunch of different things. We kind of wanted to just have this flow versus kind of hammering home questions. What do you think? Have we missed anything? What's one thing, maybe two things that if someone's listening to this and either is struggling because they have an autistic kid, or they don't want to admit they have one, or just maybe help someone who doesn't have someone like that in their life just understand better? I mean, what did we miss that you could throw out there for these people?
I think one of the biggest things is that as a parent, you are the expert on your child, not the doctors, not the, there are plenty of experts in the field, but when it comes to your child, you are the expert as the parent. You know your child better than a doctor will. You know your child better than a psychiatrist will, or an evaluator, or a therapist. I think it's very important for parents to know that if they feel there is something different about their child, they're probably spot on, and to trust your gut, to go with that feeling. And if you're sitting in a doctor's office and they want to, no, they're just a slow learner. They're a late bloomer. But you live with that child, the doctor doesn't. So if you feel like something is different, then keep pushing. And you have every right to fire your doctor. You have every right to fire a therapist, an evaluator, psychiatrist, whatever. If you feel like that's not a good fit, go with your gut as your child's biggest advocate, as the parent. Fire the doctor and find somebody else. Find somebody until you just keep looking until you find someone who's going to listen to you and take you seriously.
That's absolutely great advice, because for me, like, my 5-year-old doesn't know how to advocate for himself.
Right.
And your 3-year-old didn't either.
Yeah, as the parent, you are the voice for your child. Now, I don't think that there comes a certain point where children, your rights as a parent should not trump your child's autonomy. Mm-hmm. That your child is still a human being. Your child is still their own person. But when it comes to things like advocacy, getting them the right diagnosis, getting them the right therapist, all of those things, you are their biggest voice, you are their biggest advocate, and as a parent, we need to be the voice if our child can't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is 100% great advice. I wish I had met you last year, because it might have been very helpful for Nicole and I going through what we went through, because it took a long time to get there. And I'm not a very patient person, so it was hard. Is Patrick shaking his head for our listening viewers that can't see us?
He is not a patient person.
So with that, we're going to prepare to bring Zach on. So we're going to take a couple minute break, get him set up, and when you guys come back, we're just going to go with it. So
all right, sounds good.
We're going to go into Zach's world.
All right, let me go up and grab him.
All right, guys, we're going to take a minute here to talk about one of our sponsors, Laura Skelly Photography. She's a family photographer located here in Richmond Hill. She specializes in natural light lifestyle photography. She loves turning clients into family and friends, and here at my house, we can definitely speak to that. She offers one of the biggest discounts to military and first responders at 20%. She also wants to help build up local businesses. She'll collaborate with them. She'll provide photographs for their business. And if you check out at lauraskellyphotography.com today and enter the promo code because you'll get 10% off.
Hey, Zach, what's up, bud?
What's going on, Zach?
Okay.
How was work tonight?
Boring.
Is it always boring?
Usually.
Yeah. So what do you usually do at work?
Mop the floor, clean the tables and seats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
And
McDonald's that I usually go to get my son his Happy Meals. So it's pretty cool that you work there.
Yeah, we had there a lot too.
Yeah.
So last time we were talking, you started telling us about your cricket in your room. How's he doing?
Well, I caught more.
Oh,
You
yeah?
got more?
I caught more
Awesome. Where did you find them?
behind the neighborhood in a little field that I had permission to go on
That's cool.
into.
So how many did you find?
There were 2 southeastern field crickets. They didn't make noise, however, it was doing it with this abnormal wing thing, so I decided to let both go. Of the southeastern field cricket, the large one.
Gotcha.
So what kind of, so you see southeastern field cricket, so forgive me, I don't know anything about crickets. So you said you found the southeastern field crickets. Are there other kinds of crickets that you find around here?
Collared ground crickets.
Okay. So what's the difference between those two? How do you know the difference?
They're different species.
Do they look different?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are they different color, or do they have different shaped wings, or?
Some are brown, some are like tan, some are black.
Okay.
Do they
or
make different
almost
sounds?
black. Yeah.
So someone told me that you know how to make the cricket sounds. Is that did I hear that correct?
Yeah, but I'm not very good at it.
I would be curious to see what it sounds like. You want to try?
But the pitch would be like, or I can't do it's too high.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I appreciate you trying. So
That's pretty good. That's
Can't do it.
that's pretty
cool.
good.
That's pretty cool, man.
So how many crickets do you have right now?
5.
Do you name them or?
I was just about to ask that. Do you have names for for the different crickets?
But living root. I don't have name for the crickets.
Oh,
No. Okay. Yeah. No. I was just curious if you name them or not. So how long do you typically keep them for?
If I notice there's abnormalities in the cricket, then I let them go. If my crickets are doing well,
Okay. We kind of lost you there for a second, but I think basically what you were saying was if they seem like they're doing well, you'll keep them for a while. But if they're showing abnormality or look like they might be a little sick, you try to let them go so they can survive.
like there was this cricket where it was doing this thing, and if they sound flogged, then I let them go.
Gotcha.
But if they're if I love the cricket, then I keep them until they die.
Okay. What's the typical lifespan for the crickets?
3 weeks.
How do you know?
I read that.
You looked it up, or I showed you?
I think I looked it up one time and it said about 3 weeks.
Okay.
3 weeks maybe.
Okay. So
But I think lifespans vary. Some may live for a year maybe, or some may live for 3 months maybe.
Okay.
So how do you keep them in your room? Is there like a special container you have, or do you just kind of make one every time you find a new one?
I have there are 2 containers, some critter keepers, a couple of bug jars or a few bug jars.
So I don't. Have you heard about this? The cicadas that are going to come out this year that haven't been out in 17 years.
Yeah, my mom, James told me that.
So are you gonna try to catch any of those?
Probably.
Okay. I mean that'd be pretty cool. I'd be kind of interested to see one.
What's a cicada?
They're these really big.
Why does your voice sounds like why do your voice sounds like something is sad or something?
I sound like I'm sad.
Oh, that's just how I sound. I try to stay low key. I can get a little peppier if you need me to.
Okay.
But no, that's a good observation. I've actually heard that before. When I try to be level, I guess. People have told me that. So that's a really good observation, Zach. So I'll try to be a little peppier. And that's why I like to do video, because I can see you and then I get excited and I can see when we have a good conversation.
Other people have noticed that with your voice too?
When I'm presenting for work, yeah, I try to stay level so that tone that I have for whatever reason can come across that way. So yeah, that's definitely something that I've been advised of before. So I just try to, my normal tone can either be super low and quiet or overly obnoxious and loud. It just depends on my mood.
Okay.
Kind of like you get really excited.
Mhm.
So yeah, so going back to these cicadas, are you excited about these? Have you done much research on them?
Yeah, the last time they were out, you were what, 5 years old? It sounds like.
But I always lived in Vermont, and now I live in Georgia.
Oh, that's right. You weren't even here when they
Yeah.
were out. So okay, so this would be the first chance you've ever been able to see them.
So
But
have
you collected cicada shells before.
I collected cicada shells
Gotcha.
before, and I caught a very few cicadas in my lifetime.
Oh, okay. Okay, awesome. So
I think I had one make noise in the critter keeper once outside in 2010.
Okay.
So what is it about crickets? Because your website it's cricketsandtrains.com, right? Do I have that
Yeah.
correct? Okay. So what is it about? We're definitely going to talk about trains because my son loves trains, so I'm excited to talk to you about trains. But as far as crickets, what is it about crickets that you love?
I just love it when they make noise in my bug jars and critter keepers and or containers, whatever I have.
Okay.
So is it just kind of like a relaxing sound for you?
Sometimes, usually, the main reason why I catch crickets, usually the reason why I like crickets is I like it when they make noise in my bug jar.
It's peaceful.
Sometimes I catch them because it's peaceful, but mostly because I love it when they make noise in my bug jar.
I gotcha.
It's been this way since 2007.
Is it easy to catch them? Like, you have to sneak up on them? Like, what do you do to catch them?
Sometimes they're easy to catch them. Sometimes it's difficult to catch them. It varies.
Do you have, like, a special tool, or do you just grab them with your hands?
I don't grab them with my hands. I have a small cricket catcher container. I heard the crickets to go in there without touching them.
Okay.
I make them go in there without touching them.
Awesome.
Now,
I make them either crawl in there or jump in there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I've seen them jump. They can jump pretty high.
So are there any times where they're easier to catch? Like, I mean,
You mean like morning, nighttime?
morning, nighttime. or if they're trying, or during mating season and there's like a bunch of them around? Like, have you found any particular time where it's easier for you to catch them?
Did you discover crickets and trains, or did Mom tell you about it?
I think. Well, I found it through your Facebook page.
Yeah, I found it. We found it through your Facebook page, Zach. Your Zach's World Facebook page.
Well, and I found your Facebook page because you actually met my wife at the event, the Tim Tebow event at First Baptist Church, and that's when I found your Facebook page a couple months ago, and then that's how I found your website.
But it seems like that the crickets listen to me better, the ones back behind the neighborhood than the ones at church for some reason.
Yeah, so you have better luck behind your neighborhood catching them than you do at the church?
It seems like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, then now you know. That's where you need to spend more time.
Now, one time when I met you, Zach, you were
the acidic soil.
talking about the acidic soil and how that's not good for crickets. Why do crickets
How do you know acidic soil is not good for crickets?
Because you told me one time.
Yeah, I guess you met him at the park a while back.
You were with the Comets, and they were getting their pictures taken, and you and I were talking, and you were asking, and you were talking about the soil acidity, and that crickets don't really like acidic soil. So, my question is to you: why do crickets not like acidic soil?
Do you not have an answer?
The internet is unstable.
Oh yeah, it says network bandwidth is low on your end.
Okay.
We'll edit this.
What about acidic soil not good for crickets?
So you told Patrick that crickets don't like acidic soil. They like to be in the fields.
I don't know if they like. I don't know if they mind it. I don't think I remember saying it.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Yeah, it was a couple years ago, bud.
It's just something you had mentioned. We're just curious.
And I was just wondering why they didn't like them, acidic soil.
I don't think they mind it. Maybe I don't know if they do. Do you think they mind it or no?
Man, I honestly have no idea. I've the most cricket knowledge I've gotten in my lifetime has been tonight from you. So I have no idea, man. I've never I'm not the cricket expert like you are, man.
Yeah, no, but I definitely can appreciate.
Where do you live?
I live in the same neighborhood as the Comets.
Is there lots of acidic soil around here?
I have no idea. I wouldn't even know the first way to tell if the soil was acidic.
Yeah, no, that's beyond our knowledge.
Very much.
Yeah, I can tell you there's a lot of crickets in my yard and in my neighborhood because I hear them all the time and I see them jumping. But that's the extent of my knowledge of crickets. We were just curious because I really like to, when someone's really into something, so much so that they even name their website after it, I find it fascinating and I just like to ask questions so I can learn because like Patrick said, I've already learned more about crickets tonight than I've ever known, and it's just because it's not something that I've ever been into, but to talk to somebody who enjoys crickets, and actually something that you said I thought was really interesting was the sounds can be, peaceful, or maybe even I don't think you use the word calming, but that's what I think of when I hear peaceful. Yeah. And I think of like night sounds when you're sleeping and stuff like that. People listen to different things, and I could see how that could help you sleeping. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the cricket noises at night. The cricket
sometimes I enjoy them to listen to the peaceful noise, but it's mostly I like it because I like it when they make noise and my bugs are the most.
So the one cricket fact I know is you can something with the chirp of the cricket you can figure out the temperature that it is outside.
I heard that before.
It's like the louder it is,
or the length of it, or something, or the frequency.
Interesting.
It's either the length of the chirp or the frequency that they chirp within like a certain time span.
I don't know if all species can tell the temperature, but I think the most accurate one may be the snowy tree cricket one.
Okay.
Which one's that?
The snowy tree cricket.
Snowy tree cricket.
Okay, where do you find that guy?
seems like we don't have snowy tree crickets around here, but in Vermont we have snowy tree crickets.
Okay, so you were
You're telling us about the snowy tree crickets where they live. And it sounds like from what we heard from you is they're kind of
in Vermont.
yeah, Vermont and the
Probably a New England cricket.
Around snowy
No,
areas.
I think they might be widespread in USA, but it seems like we don't have them around here.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
we don't hear any around here.
I guess that would make sense.
Right.
The only other question I have about crickets, and Patrick, if you have more, by all means, please feel free to ask. But what do you feed them?
Shake the insects and feed them and give them plants.
Okay. I don't know why I was thinking like moths or something, but that seems pretty simple. And that's obviously, I'm sure you could just find that stuff in the backyard or in the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
So I know that some people use crickets to fish with. Would you think there is any particular species of cricket that would be better to fish with?
Why are you asking that?
I'm just curious if what you would think, if like just from what you know about crickets and the research you've done, if you would think that one particular species would be better or worse.
I don't think it matters for fish.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking to a fish, a cricket looks like a cricket.
I mean,
It's kind of a random question. Let's talk about trains.
okay. I have a little bit more experience and knowledge on trains.
I love the fact that, so my experience with getting to know you, Zach, has been through your Facebook page. And most of the pictures I see is you waiting for the trains at the train tracks. So what is it about trains that you love?
I don't love all trains, to be honest.
Okay.
Okay.
What's your favorite?
I'll show you. I'll show you what my favorite train looks like.
Cool.
All right.
He just takes off. I like
Close
it.
the door on his mom. Bye, Erika.
This is why I like video, because then we get to see stuff.
I drew it. I colored the train. I made a train.
Oh, is that the train on your wall?
Oh, wow. Yeah, the one up on the wall there.
Yeah, your mom showed us that last week.
Wow.
That's
How many tenders are on that thing?
2. Need to have 2 matching or close to matching engines at the front.
So for a train that long, would both engines need to be on, like running, to help pull it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. It would need that much power. That's I mean, what you're showing us here has about like 10 tenders, but that thing keeps going. There's like 50, 60 tenders on this thing.
And look at the cars on this train. What do you notice about the train cars?
They're pretty identical.
You've got a sequence
What
of
do
some
they look
sort
like?
going. They look like the trains that run through our neighborhood. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
What do you notice about the cars?
They're different colors.
Yeah, I'm missing it, buddy. You're gonna have to tell me. What's the secret here?
See the train clearly?
Okay.
See it clearly?
Yep, I see those 3 gray ones, and I see the yellow one. I see it looks like an oil tanker type deal.
It's got 2 flat ones.
See how the cars are all different types?
Yeah.
Yep. Mhm.
That's what my favorite train looks like.
Okay, I see.
So you like the one with the mixed bag, so all the different cars.
Yeah, but I can be very picky how I want the 2 engines to be at the front.
So the ones that come through the neighborhood, when they're the long ones like that, I've never thought to even look or pay attention. I'm just stuck waiting in my car. Do they typically have 2 engines in the front?
2 or more, yeah.
Okay.
Oh wow.
So how long have you been? Has trains kind of always been something that you've liked since you were a little kid?
Yeah, but I like them more, maybe. But not all trains are good trains.
So what kind of trains don't you like? Like what's like your top train that you don't like?
Amtrak. Trains that don't have enough variety of different cars.
Okay.
Trains that only have one engine at the front. Trains that are too short, like 16 or under cars. Trains that have 16 or less cars.
Mm-hmm.
Trains that don't have enough variety of freight cars.
Yeah.
If they're all the same, it's boring. For some trains are better, even though they have all the same cars because they're big. And don't distract me, Mom.
So when you go to sit at the tracks in town, do you have the schedule? Like, do you know when they're coming, or do you just sometimes just go and wait? And I mean, eventually they come through every day almost.
They come through every day, I think. But there's like one train schedule that I think I know when it's going to come more accurately, which is an intermodal. Do you know what an intermodal train is?
I have no idea. Please tell me.
Yeah, I've never heard of an intermodal.
Look up intermodal train.
Patrick, look up intermodal
train.
Look up intermodal. So is that one that comes through town every day?
You know the shipping containers.
Oh, okay. Yep, I've seen those.
That's an intermodal train.
Gosh.
Okay.
But there's some trains that are a little bit better, even though the cars are the same. Because, like, I heard of an auto rack train.
I haven't. No.
Auto rack car.
Okay,
so that's okay. So the intermodal, he's looking it up. Sorry, Zach. So, that's the
two container cars.
Yeah. So look at the auto rack. So the intermodal has the double stack shipping containers, which probably come from the port or going to the port. And now he's looking at auto rack. Oh, I see.
My least favorite train.
Go ahead.
My least favorite trains would be maybe like coal trains, or trains that are too short or don't have enough variety. And my trains I wouldn't like as much are all tankers or all coal cars. However, intermodal trains, even though they're the same, and auto rack trains are, even though they're the same, are a little bit better because the cars have more variety of colors for the intermodal train and how it looks. And even though the cars are all the same on the auto rack train, they're slightly better because the cars are big, tall, and long.
Gotcha.
That's why.
Yeah, and it's not something you're going to see all the time, too, so it's pretty cool, I'm sure, when it comes through.
But my most favorite type of train of all time is the mixed freight with two or more matching or close to matching engines at the front.
Gotcha. So, Zach, what do you what are your thoughts, and how do you feel about all the graffiti and artwork that are done on the train cars? Because I think that
occasionally I like it, but usually I don't care about it. But all I care is the length of the train. Okay. I like how long the train is.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're sitting out there for a little bit, so when it comes by, you want it to be worth it. So you want to see a nice big train, right?
Yeah, a long train. My favorite trains are mixed freight trains with a variety of different types of train cars. Do you know what a train car is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what do you think is the most amount of train cars you've seen on one train go by?
I don't know, possibly over 200.
Wow.
That's a long train.
That would take miles to stop.
Yeah.
Like, if they were going to the port, I don't even know if the track goes to the port, but they probably start stopping in Richmond Hill.
Yeah.
So when you were a kid... go ahead. You were going to say something?
I don't think the trains would be too long that I would stop in Richmond Hill from Savannah.
Yeah, no, I know. I was just exaggerating, but I figured it would have to start stopping way before the port. When you were a kid, were you into like Thomas the Train at all? Because my son he loved Thomas the Train. He's not super into it now.
Not really, but I kind of liked Thomas the Train shows a little bit.
Yeah. My favorite Thomas engine or friend was Diesel. Do you remember Diesel?
Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know what kind of train he was. That's the one I always grab when we play trains upstairs. That's the one I always grab is the Diesel train.
Okay.
Is it the wooden one?
No, he's all black, and he's a diesel engine. I know that. I'm pretty positive there. That's pretty much all I can tell you.
It's a freight engine?
It's rectangular with a rounded top. So I don't know. And it's flat on the front and flat on the back. If I had any idea where it was, I would grab it and show you.
Like a school bus rounded at the top?
Yeah, actually, it looks like a school bus on train track. Yeah, that's a good example. It looks like a school bus. Yeah. But it's flat in the front.
I may have seen him. I don't know.
Yeah, no. That was the one I always grab. My son always likes to grab Thomas, of course, because that's the train he likes to play with. Or he likes James and Percy too. But I mean, that's little kid stuff. So.
I also like fireflies.
Oh, okay.
I still catch them.
So I take it you do your firefly catching and cricket catching technique, are they kind of similar? Do you do
sometimes fireflies fly slow enough for me to catch it with the critter cage if the opening is wide enough, or if the jar lid is wide enough, or I can use the net.
Okay.
No, from being excuse me, from when I was a kid, fireflies, I remember trying to catch them when I was camping. Is that more of a summertime, like late spring, summertime thing?
Well, it seems like here they're most common in late spring, like maybe in like early May.
Okay. Yeah, I figured that would definitely not be a winter thing.
So it'd be in the next coming weeks.
Yeah, there's a few out already.
Well, then you need to get out there and catch them.
Yeah, but there's not enough to catch. There's I have to be impatient to catch them because there's not very many, but every day there'll be a little bit more and more.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. If you wait till there's a few more, it'll definitely be easier.
So, Zach, I have one more question for you about trains, and then we can go back to fireflies. Have you ever gone on a long? Have you ever ridden in a train on like a long distance trip, like for vacation or anything like that?
No, but I've gone on tourist railroads.
Could you repeat that one more time?
I went on tourist railroad rides.
Gotcha.
Okay. Well,
I heard of Strasburg Railroad.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Such as that one.
Okay. And have you frequented the train museum in Savannah?
I think I visited there once.
Okay, my son likes to go there too, so we've gone there a few times, and you can ride the train for like 27 feet. That's pretty much what it feels like, so it's nice. But then you can see they have some old trains there, which is really cool. They have some of the old train cars that it looks like, I guess maybe rich people used to ride in because they're pretty fancy looking inside. So it's pretty cool to check that out sometimes. So let's go back to fireflies.
I'm good.
That came out of left field. I didn't know that was going to come up. And I remember trying to catch fireflies when I was a kid, and that was kind of fun. I was terrible at it. I don't remember ever catching any.
I don't believe I ever tried.
You tried to catch them and you couldn't?
When I was a kid, I remember trying to catch them.
What way did you try?
With a net, I think, like one of my fishing nets in the middle of the night.
Was it in the nighttime or at dusk?
I would say it was probably in the middle, probably like 10 to 12 o'clock when I should have been sleeping, camping.
Well, why didn't you go out at dusk? Sometimes there's fireflies at dusk.
honestly, if I can recall correctly, I just remember seeing little blinking lights and my friends just saying, let's go try to catch fireflies, and I just went with it. So it wasn't anything that I was into. They just happened to mention it, I think. We were camping.
Did they have good luck at catching them?
I don't remember, because that was a long time ago. Until you said fireflies, I forgot they even existed.
What?
Until
what
you
made them so?
Go ahead. Sorry.
What made them so difficult to catch?
I don't remember. I mean, gosh, that must have been, 25 years ago. Zach, you're making me feel old, man. Come on. Yeah, that was a long time ago. I don't remember, but I mean, are they fast?
Maybe go like this.
Okay.
They can be elusive and agile though when they fly.
But do they fly in groups?
I don't know.
No.
They just seem to be scattered all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I'm going to have to see if I can see some coming in the next few weeks. Micah might find them pretty interesting if he sees blinking lights.
They're out now, but not as many.
Yeah. I'll have to take a look. Maybe on the weekend, if I let him stay up late, we'll see around. You said dusk. That's a word that I can't say. Dusk time is the best time to look for them.
While you can see their bodies a little bit at dusk, depends where you live.
Okay.
But the faster they're blinking, the easier it is to catch.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
but if they're blinking slower, it can be somewhat difficult to catch because I can't see the silhouette of a firefly.
Right.
Yeah, at dusk, with it having a little bit of light out, you can kind of see like a black little dot go in front of you, and then all of a sudden it fires.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, so you can still see the shadow of the body. Where at midnight, when it's pitch black out, you're only looking for the light.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. I understand now. So we mentioned your website earlier, the cricketsandtrains.com. I noticed on there when I went to look at it that it looks like some greeting cards that you've made that you have available for sale. Did you make all those by yourself?
Some of them, but like I drew it and then Mom did the lollipop thing.
Okay. Yeah, because I know your mom has done art in the past.
Have you seen the different ones?
Yeah, I did like those. Those are pretty cool.
Yeah,
I drew the body and Mom colored it in.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, you're very talented at artwork as well. I mean, when Jim first started telling me about the different art that you did, he was talking about that the last one you did with the skull.
Oh, the sugar skull.
But unfortunately, one of the bat wings got off, probably because the dogs got it.
Oh, so how did you make? Is that like made from a mixture of sugar and water, or is that why it's called the sugar skull?
It just called it that, but it's actually made of clay.
Okay. Yeah, because I had noticed on Facebook you had kind of progressively posted some pictures as you were adding stuff, and then you added, so you had the skull, you added, looks like there were like some bat wings and a tombstone.
Tells the story how she lived and died.
So for people listening, can you tell them the story? What was your thought process behind it?
I'm trying to think. My brain is kind of lazy, so.
Mine too sometimes. Don't worry.
So you said it was about the story about how she lived and died. Who is she?
Emily Martin. It's a made-up person I made.
Okay.
And then so I think.
And she loved camping, and she did a photography for a living, I think.
Okay.
And she loved camping, and one day she got bit by a rabbit and died from rabies.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. And I think your mom had mentioned that too, because she was telling us a little bit about it before when we were talking. So that's pretty creative. So what do you do with your artwork? Do you just kind of have a collection of it in your room or in the house?
It's in the closet. You want to see it or no?
Yeah. By all means, if you want to show us.
But one of the wing broke off because the dogs got it.
That's all right. Yeah. Well, now, I
I
mean,
wish it didn't happen.
now it's going to look even scarier.
No, it looks worse.
Yeah, if you want to grab it and show us, we'd love to see it.
I think he's grabbing his sugar skull to show you.
Yeah, that's what.
Dogs bumped into it, and I think that's how the wing fell off because we found them chewing on it.
Yeah. Wow. That's.
It was such a bummer. He worked so hard on this.
That is really cool.
Hey, since he doesn't have his headphones on, let him know that we think that's really cool.
They're saying that it's really, really cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, there is a way to make another wing, and you can attach it when it gets fired for the second time. They add wax to it, so it kind of fuses it together.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's got an amazing gift with his clay projects. I'm gonna hand him back the headphones.
Yeah, but the leaves and the flowers that you have on the skull, kind of that crown, that's the
detail's amazing.
The detail is just incredible, man. That's really, really good.
It's like a crown of flowers, is what they're saying. It's the same.
Yeah, you have a lot of.
What if the wing doesn't fit on? Oh, yeah, because it will smush. It's flexible.
Yep.
Yeah, you have a lot of talent and a good gift in that art, man. I can't even draw a stick figure.
I can draw a stick figure, but that's the extent of my ability. So what's next?
I'm just looking at it.
What's going to be your next art project?
The one I'm doing is what's it called? Art project.
Oh, your painting class?
No, the ceramic.
Oh, ceramics.
What is it called?
What, ceramics?
No, the next project on my
Oh, you're doing a Cricket King.
I'm doing a Cricket King.
Okay. So did you already start working on that one?
Yeah.
And when do you think you're going to be finished with that one? How long do they usually take you?
Maybe it'll be finished in 2.5 weeks from now. I don't know.
Okay. Well,
now, is this like the cricket the insect or the cricket the machine?
Like cricket body with a human head.
Okay.
I'm definitely looking forward to seeing
I'm
what you
intrigued.
come up with on that one. Please make sure you're posting updates on Facebook and some pictures.
Yes, I am definitely intrigued by that. Now, for the face, are you modeling the face out of anybody in particular, or are you just kind of drawing it with whatever comes to your mind?
Modeling the face to make it try to look the best.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah.
So, what in regards to going back to the greeting cards that you make that you just make and they just happen to be on the website, where's the inspiration there? Do you just whatever you kind of feel like making one day and it just comes together?
What information?
No, I was saying the greeting cards that you made that are on your website. How do you come up with those ideas? Is it just you're kind of just go with it and make them up as you go, or do you have specific ideas you like to make?
I don't know.
Okay.
Can I help?
Yeah.
What's the question? Okay, he said he needs some help.
Yeah, no worries. No, I was asking for the greeting cards on the website. Is it just kind of like random, or does he have a process? Like, I've noticed the ones on there, they're pretty cool looking. They're pretty creative. So
where does he come up with the ideas?
Yeah, where do the ideas come from?
What's this on here?
Oh, so he comes.
What's this on here?
Hang on, but so he comes up with. I'm not sure. We're not really like the crickets and trains ones that he's come up with. Obviously, those were things that he loved.
Mm-hmm.
So those were easy to come up with. The different, like the cards about being different, that was a project. Those were the first line of cards that we came out with, and it was Zach loves to draw, and it's something that keeps him entertained, especially if we're like in a doctor's office or when he was at school or even at home. So I found this notebook that had all these pictures of what he called weird or different people, and they all had like, maybe 3 legs or, a couple of heads, and their legs were in all different configurations. They were really cool looking. It looked like something out of maybe like a Roald Dahl book. So I said this would make actually a really cool line of cards where you could make cards with these different looking people and have sayings on them about being different and how great that is, because a lot of people look at Zach as different. So, but that could be something because you're autistic. A lot of people don't understand that different is good. Like, it's great to be different. There are a lot of different people in this world that bring different abilities and different assets to society. And so we wanted to make a line of cards that spoke to how great different can be. So he sat down and I gave him 8 pieces of cardstock and just told him to go ahead and draw his different people. And so that's what he came up with. And so then he drew the people, I colored them in, and then we came up with different sayings that we could put on the cards. And almost done. Almost. And that just, it took off. Like, everybody in the community loved them. And people just said, if you make other cards, we'll buy those too. So
they're very cool.
Yeah.
And they are, different and unique. It's, with the drawing, but I mean,
it beats any Hallmark card in my book.
Yeah. And then we just.
But it's just a great thing to see that, not all cards have to be, the pretty thing with flowers and the whimsical writing and stuff like that. I mean, it could be anything, and it could still be inspirational.
Yeah, and then we just kind of went from there. Like, people kept asking, like, what new cards are you making now? So he did a pack of cards that had 2 train cars on them and 2 cards that had fireflies. And so we offered those, and then he did holiday cards. Then we came out with the Valentine's cards. He did some holiday ones for a bunch of actually, he did some holiday cards this last year where he did one with like a train in a winter scene, and he did a Christmas tree. He also did a really cool card that was just a custom order for a local business. They commissioned him to do 60 Christmas cards just for their customers.
Oh,
so
wow. That's awesome.
That is really cool.
That one we didn't put out on his website because that was just a specific, that was a custom order that was specifically made for them. He made a very humorous one for my personal friends. That was a little, I don't want to call it inappropriate. It just had some very colorful words on it. It's something that Zach would normally say that maybe, was a bit more colorful. And so we came out with that card, and actually he ended up selling, I think, about 150 of them to my friends. And
I'm guessing from the stories you told us after the episode last week, he was using his Sharpie.
Kind of, yes. He used his favorite word that he used with the Sharpie, which most parents would have kids scrub off, but it was actually a huge hit, and he sold 150 of them, and that's how he made the money to buy all of his Christmas gifts for all of his family.
So if you guys ever go on a dry spell of selling cards, just drop a couple on the website with a couple choice words, and you'll get some sales.
Right.
That's exactly it. We thought about doing Valentine's ones, but we just kind of we dropped the ball on that one. But
that's funny.
Yeah, we want to. Zach and I do want to come out with some more cards.
You know which cards I did?
Yeah, I just told them.
Well, Merry fucking Christmas.
Okay, so yes, you're gonna have to bleep that one. Go back and edit that.
Well, I think that's got to stay in.
We might just leave that in.
That might have to stay in.
And it's on the inside. It said, so that's what it said. Have a merry beep Christmas. And then
Merry ducking Christmas, people.
Sounds
Merry
like
ducking Christmas.
Sounds like a quote from Die Hard.
And on the inside, I'll pretty up the word, but it said in a witching new year, but it had the other.
Actually, that's cleaner than the other one.
Yes.
Well, no. It had the B word.
Oh no, I know. I'm just saying it
yeah,
sounds cleaner than the other one.
But everybody loved them. Like all of my friends were all about it. I had them like sending them to their grandmothers and their aunts, and most people that received them loved them. I had one friend. She said it created this big stink where the grandmother and the aunt and the cousin were all calling her and asking why would she send something back. She said it was the best Christmas she's ever had.
Yeah, so
funny.
If I had that card, I would definitely send it to my sister, and she would think it's the best thing in the world. So
if I had that card, I would just tape it to the mirror in the bathroom so I could look at it and laugh every day.
We couldn't keep up with the demand. Like we had to like do a cutoff at a certain point.
Start
like, okay,
making some now. Prepare. People probably already shopping for Christmas.
at Hobby Lobby.
Yeah. Oh, seriously. Yeah. Pick an aisle at Hobby Lobby, right? So I only have, I think, maybe 2 more questions for Zach.
He has 2 more questions for you, and then you can go eat dinner. Okay?
I'll make them quick.
He said he'll make them quick. Here's your headset. 2 more questions.
So I have 2 more.
2 or 3 bowls of it.
You hungry? I'm hungry too, man. Now you're talking about food.
What question?
So one of my final 2 questions is, the first one is, I've heard sometimes you toss out a funny joke here and there, and it's okay if I'm putting you on the spot, so if you don't have one, but if you have one, what's your favorite joke to tell?
And it doesn't necessarily have to be clean.
No, it doesn't. You just tell us if you've got one off the top of your head.
I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. No worries. So then my last question that I wanted to kind of pick your brain on was, I've seen the post online that you're graduating here in a few weeks. Is that exciting to you? Are you nervous? Are you happy? How do you feel about it?
I'm a little bit normally a little bit excited, but what I'm most excited about is a train party.
Nice.
Yes, that does sound pretty cool. Yeah, we're gonna share that information too, because I think the train party's pretty cool, and when we release the episode, we're gonna make sure that we include that in there, because the whole town, I think this whole town knows you, or at least knows about you. So I think it's pretty cool that you're graduating and everybody's gonna be able to celebrate it with you. So I'm glad that you're looking forward to it, and I'm sure you're gonna miss going to school, but I'm gonna assume you're excited.
I think I heard you say. I think that sounds fun.
Yeah. So we definitely appreciate the time, Zach. I know you're hungry. I know you want to get to that food. I don't blame you. I'm hungry myself. Thank you for teaching us about crickets. Thank you for teaching us a little bit about trains, reminding me that fireflies exist. And if you guys haven't had a chance yet, if you're cricketsandtrains.com, and then Zach's World on Facebook is where you can find this guy. He's pretty awesome. He's got a great story, and he is very artistic.
Very much, yes. And
okay.
But yeah, no, you're good.
It was fun talking to you, meeting you.
Yeah, you too,
nice
buddy.
To meet you too, bud.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll talk to you soon, bud.
It was a little bit fun talking to you.
Hey, I'll take a little bit of fun.
I have to be honest.
Yeah, no. We like honesty, buddy. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Welcome. Bye.
All right, bye.